their name for you.
There are no strings on me.
Pinocchio, the timeless children's tale about a sentient hunk of pine that gets asked, "Hey, y'all wanna be real?"
Yes, I would.
Okay, there's a little more to it than that, including morals about temptation and selflessness, obvious biblical analogies, a protagonist who subtly follows the journey that every newly made person goes through, furries, Shark Week, paranormal activity, a metric load of criminal activity that never gets rectified or resolved, and of course the story's signature omnipresent dark theming. Heck, there's so much darkness surrounding this story, I wouldn't be surprised if other books were afraid of it. Look, I am literally a novel bound in human flesh, and even I think this guy's taking it too far. What a coincidence! Because my insides are made of unborn puppet flesh! And now I see him every time I close my eyes. So of course, like with every significant story in history, there's been a flood of adaptations trying to carve out their own unique perspective on the narrative. Seems like everyone takes a crack at the old morally confused marionette at some point, and they come in many unique forms. We got Disney's timeless animated masterpiece, a 1972 live-action miniseries by Luigi Comenici, a Japanese anime where Jiminy's a duck, a 2019 adaptation that sticks as close to the book's dark themes as possible, and the best-running joke on Whose Line since Carol Channing.
The good news is the surgery was successful and now you look like a movie star. The bad news is that movie star is Drew Carey.
But for some inexplicable reason, 2022 seems to be obsessed with old phone Nokia, as we got not one, but 3 reimaginings of the character in the same year. An American redub, a Disney remake, and an original stop-motion piece. Usually on Cartoon Clash I cover 3 movies with a similar trope or character type, but the planets all align here so perfectly that I just gotta make an exception. So in this video, we're gonna pit these 3 films against each other to see which ones are the true masterpieces, and which ones would make good firewood. If you have any thoughts on this trio of movies, or any thoughts on my thoughts, feel free to leave a comment below. But for now, it's Disney versus Del Toro versus Vasiliy Rovenskiy. Him. In the big battle for the real boy belt. Let's see which cinematic puppeteer pulled the strings most effectively. Let the show begin. You know, I'm actually really happy that Disney's 2022 remake of Pinocchio exists, because now I get an excuse to talk about the original. When it comes to nostalgic Disney classics, different sectors of the general public are always quick to sing the praises of certain films. You got the old school mainstream crowd who remember watching the Renaissance era movies like Little Mermaid, Aladdin, and Lion King during childhood. You got the underdog supporters who believe that more people should pay attention to movies like Atlantis and Treasure Planet, which I agree with. And of course, every animation is a medium, not a genre loyalist will be guaranteed to sing in perfect unison, "Watch Fantasia! Watch Fantasia!" But if there's one film I see a surprising lack of love for, at least online, it's the original Pinocchio. Yeah, so many Disney films get gallivanted and paraded around like heroes, while this little guy mostly just sits in the corner gathering dust and termites, and that's just so unfair. This was Disney's second full-length animated outing. Second! And yet it still has supreme storybook storytelling, criminally charming characters, animation so mind-blowingly fantastic even for today that it'll make your body spin while your head stays in place, and morals and themes that are super easy for kids to swallow, and yet leave plenty to chew on for adults. I honestly feel like a total that for not praising this movie sooner, but that ends today. I'm gonna analyze this movie character by character and show you all why it's a masterpiece. Oh, and of course, show you all why the remake doesn't quite get it right. Like, at all. Seriously, like, everything is wrong here. Alright, let's go. The best place to start is with the first character you hear, and then see, and then meet, and also my favorite character in the whole movie, Jiminy Cricket. There are very few characters that have as much iconographic value in the Disney canon as he does. Sure, Mickey's the head honcho and Tink taps the logo on occasion, but Jiminy sings the company's freaking anthem. Oh, say can Disney... The full song is performed beautifully over the opening credits, with choir accompaniment that makes it sound like a heavenly hymn. And it's not just done to set the magical mood, it's actually a song that ties into Jiminy's character, as he explains that he was once a bug that didn't believe in abstract ideals like wishes coming true, but a simple life experience wound up turning that all around for him. And so, the story begins. Now, everybody knows Jiminy as Pinocchio's conscience, that little voice inside your head that helps to guide Pinocchio through some of life's toughest obstacles. But I don't think people truly understand how masterfully Disney tackled this concept of a personified conscience when it comes to both metaphors and characterization. First of all, it shows kids exactly how a conscience is supposed to work in very simple and even subtle ways. Obviously, Pinocchio communicates with Jiminy, who tells him right from wrong. That's basic, that's the Babu explanation. But if you pay close attention as an adult, you'll notice other ways that Jiminy mirrors the behavior of a conscience as well. Like how Jiminy being late on the first day demonstrates how you sometimes make split-second decisions before your conscience eventually kicks in. Or my favorite, how Jiminy slipping further and further away from Pinocchio but still keeping an eye on him shows that your conscience is never truly gone, it's always there looking after you, able to be questioned and listened to if you want, but the more you give into temptations or make decisions without thinking, the more the concept of consulting your conscience slips into the back of your mind. In fact, go watch Pinocchio again and take note of the proximity of Pinocchio and Jiminy to each other in their scenes together. When Pinocchio makes righteous decisions or regrets his actions, Jiminy's practically right next to him. When he starts off on the wrong path to a choice, he's within earshot or so. When he's actively doing the wrong thing, he's much further away. And then when he completely goes off the deep end on Pleasure Island, they almost part ways entirely. Oh, and if you're wondering if Jiminy trying to leave Pinocchio for good shoots this metaphor in the foot, I honestly don't think Jiminy was ever gonna leave him forever. He was fueled by anger at the time, and I'll bet that once he cooled down and the boat was about to take off, he would have realized, nah, I can't leave that kid behind, and rushed back to his side. This not only makes him look like a real stand-up guy, which is good for his character, but further proves that as far as you may drift away from good moral judgment, your conscience can and always will come back to you when you call on it. Second, Jiminy is clearly a very good friend to Pinocchio. They have back and forth with one another, help each other out, share emotional moments with one another. They're clearly very close. And not only is this charming from a character perspective, but it perfectly shows the audience what could happen if you start giving into temptation too much. Remember that scene in the pool hall where Pinocchio and Jiminy argue and then Jiminy storms off? Well, because we've already seen the close bond these two share, along with the whole conscience metaphor, Jiminy leaving during this scene shows that when you make too many bad choices, not only will you lose yourself, but you'll also lose those that you are close to. Your real friends, your real family, the people who only want what's best for you. And in the end, all that'll be left are smug posers who simply want a bootlicking entourage that they can mold into whatever they want and order around like a slave. And third, and most importantly in my eyes, Jiminy's just a normal guy like the rest of us.
What if Jiminy was one of us?
It would have been so easy for Disney to make him into a morally righteous, stick-up-his-butt, one-dimensional shoulder angel whose personality can just be summed up as that voice that tells Pinocchio what to do. But they didn't do that. Jiminy is a well-rounded and really charming everyman with all the flaws and interesting traits of one. He can be generous, but also greedy. He can be caring, but he gets fed up. He can be a cynic, a snark, a perv, and he actually goes through an interesting arc. He's a realist at first, believing that people in the world today are screwed and things like wishing are impractical, but eventually he grows into a teacher who, despite getting angry multiple times, is ultimately able to set someone on the path to righteousness. He was able to make a difference, even if it's just a little one, and as a result, he both finds a sense of purpose and gets his faith in the world and miracles restored again. Faith being the very thing the wishing star represents. He's not just the morals and metaphors he represents, he's an actual person we root for. And the fact that Disney was able to balance Jiminy being both a good character and a symbol for how a conscience works is amazing in my eyes. Heck, the fact that the designers basically designed him to look nothing like a cricket and instead like a little green man makes the sentiment even stronger. Despite being a cricket, he's as human as the rest of us. He may wear that holier-than-thou fancy suit on the outside, but on the inside, he's just like you and me. So how did the remake do? Well, first of all, we don't even get the full Wish Upon a Star song, we just get Jiminy singing the last verse over the opening logo, which just feels kinda slapdashed and thrown in there. We get no personal history between Jiminy and the song here, he just kinda says, "Oh well, that tale's a doozy," and he can't wait for us to hear it, which is another omission that makes Jiminy weaker as a character. And then we get this strange fourth wall break where Jiminy talks to himself as the narrator, and it just feels kinda cringy and awkward. I mean, the original had a joke too where the book tries to shut itself and Jiminy puts a candle in front to fix it, but that was charming and made sense. This just feels more insulting than anything. Like they're criticizing the very words that began the original story while trying to be modern and self-aware, and it just doesn't work. Okay, bad start, but does he at least do a good job of symbolizing what a conscience should be? Well, no, because he gets stuck in this glass jar for most of the first half and is completely unable to run to Pinocchio's side or communicate with him at all. This completely ruins the whole distance metaphor I mentioned before, since Jiminy is completely static for multiple scenes, completely misses the puppet show, and only comes across Pinocchio by chance when the wagon conveniently rolls by and sets him free. It also damages his character since he doesn't look after Pinocchio or return to him of his own accord. It's just sheer dumb luck that he even runs into him again. Sure, Jiminy gets stuck in a glass bottle near the end of the original movie, which is kind of similar to this, but that happened at the very end when Pinocchio already had a basic idea of right and wrong. It suggests finality, like Pinocchio doesn't even need to consult his conscience to know the right thing to do anymore. He's got to get his family out of this whale and home safely. But this happens smack dab in the middle of the movie, when he clearly still needs guidance. Well, technically he doesn't, but we'll get to that later. This stupid glass jar plot point completely ruins the whole conscience metaphor that the original did so well. Okay, what about the pool hall scene? That's Jiminy's other big shining moment, right? Did they at least nail that one? No, they don't even have it at all, since Jiminy gets launched down a drain and only returns after the donkey transformation is even happening. So yet another moralist scrap where Pinocchio loses those closest to him because of his bad actions. Though, to be fair, the bond between these two feels a lot weaker than the original, so it wouldn't have really hit as hard anyways, but still, that's another thing the remake completely skipped. Oh, and Jiminy's whole character arc, basically non-existent. He doesn't get a newfound faith in the world, he doesn't get a badge, he doesn't get anything. He bookends the movie at the beginning and the end, but the same connection he had to the story in the original just isn't there. Everything that made this character important and interesting was just replaced with a creepy rubber mask looking design and a high screechy voice, which I know is filthy rich coming from me. It's such a freaking travesty. You deserve better than this, my little green man. Alright, how about Pinocchio himself? In my eyes, much like Jiminy, Disney's original portrayal of Pinocchio is the perfect balance of character and metaphor. He's the antithesis of the phrase, "I wasn't born yesterday," because he literally was. As such, he's easily deceived, really quick to trust, constantly asks questions, and gravitates towards very simple monkey brain level temptations like pretty lights and catchy music. While he's the one who ultimately makes the choice in the end, you can't really be mad at him since he literally just came into the world. His mistakes are charming because we know from the start that he wants to do good, even if he doesn't fully understand what good is yet, but those basic temptations just keep catching his underdeveloped mind off guard, and it makes us want to follow him and watch him get better, instead of get mad at him and say that he should have known better, because he couldn't have. But the movie still shows that regardless of intentions or knowledge, bad things still merit consequences that stick, and Pinocchio learns this in many ways. The reason the nose-growing scene is so iconic is because it's a simple action with a simple effect. When he lies, his nose grows. When you do bad things happen. Simple. And when the blue fairy comes in to restore his nose and open his cage, she can be seen as the embodiment of mercy, giving someone a second chance. When you apologize and vow to never wrong others again, you can be absolved of consequences, but not consistently. Blue Fairy even says this is the last time she's going to help him, so he better shape up now. And he does. Pinocchio does show clear growth with every consequence he receives. Heck, if you compare the two Honest John scenes to each other, Pinocchio goes fully along with the duo during the first one, but in the second one, he starts off being more resilient and basically has to be worn down and dragged off to Pleasure Island, and only when he gets on the coach is he fully on board with the idea. Sure, he does make the wrong decision at the end, but he still shows progress. He grows like a good character should. I adore this little wooden head, and I wanted nothing but the best for him all throughout the movie. Look at him clapping along with the audience. He has no idea what's going on. I love him. But the best part about Pinocchio is what he represents. I heard some people were confused as to why the Blue Fairy gifted Pinocchio with human speech and motor skills, but not moral values. Like, why not just Amazon Prime deliver the whole human package while you're at it? Well, because that's the point. Things like moving and walking and talking are basic mechanical skills that anybody can pick up if given time. But what makes us real people is everything else. The choices we make, the actions we take, the mistakes we endure, and the things we learn from them. Every human has their own story, their own regrets, their own lessons, their own triumphs, their own defeats. We're all different. And only when Pinocchio endures all of these things for himself and has his own story to tell does he finally become human. That's what truly makes him a real boy. So how did the remake do? Well, simply put, Pinocchio is either too righteous or too justified when it comes to his actions. Like, the movie completely turns the most basic of morals on its head, that bad actions yield bad consequences, and turns it into good actions yield bad consequences. I'm not kidding, look at these scenes! Instead of ignoring Jiminy's advice and going to the theater, Pinocchio actually goes to school like a good boy in this version, but then he just gets kicked out and told that school is no place for puppets, which makes Pinocchio's choice to go to the theater completely justified in this version since he's not welcome in class. You're basically telling kids that they're gonna get ridiculed if they do the right thing, which is a terrible lesson. During the Pleasure Island scene, which was nerfed to high heaven by the way, seriously, root beer and candy instead of alcohol and cigars, that doesn't have nearly the same punch. But anyway, during the scene when it's logical for Pinocchio to give into this sensory overload of temptation and peer pressure, he just doesn't. He doesn't do a single thing wrong on Pleasure Island aside from one sip of root beer and one pool shot. Heck, he even verbally detests this behavior at one point, and yet he still gets the iconic ears and tail despite the fact that he is adamantly against the things they're doing. I actually saw some people get mad that his donkey parts disappeared near the end of the movie, but I'm just upset that he got him in the first place. Also, this is just a nitpick, but the tail and ears are wooden in this version, which seems like a nice touch, but I prefer when they were organic since it shows that no matter what you're made of, real actions merit real consequences, hence the ears and tail being real, but whatever. Even the nose growing scene, the easiest thing to get right, was botched here, having Pinocchio actually lie in order to set himself free. No blue fairy, no metaphor of mercy absolving you of consequence, no proper lesson learned, just grabbing the key on their own with the power of fibbing. No moral, no focus, just Shrek.
I'm wearing ladies' underwear.
I don't know if they wanted Pinocchio to be a better role model for the kids right away or whatever, but when you have him go through the same road trip of insane morality when he's already a squeaky clean little sapling, you completely ignore what this journey was supposed to do. How can you teach morals and humanity to a character who already has them? It makes no sense. Okay, what else? Villains! The villains are fun, right? Honest John and Gideon are a great duo. Fun personalities, great slapstick, their designs are cool both aesthetically and figuratively, like John is literally sly as a fox, and Gideon is a cat that's nearly killed by curiosity, like right here, and here. It's cute. Stromboli's really funny with his larger-than-life personality and gut, along with his lightning speed Italian rants. The coachman is absolutely terrifying in his designs, motivations, and actions, shipping naughty children to be used in the salt mines. Oh, now I get the reference! And most interestingly of all four of these guys get off completely scot-free without any just desserts being served whatsoever. Though in Coachman and Stromboli's case, I think it's better that they avoided just desserts since they could stand to lose a few pounds. But either way, the villains are fun, diabolical, and show that sometimes evil can't always be triumphed right away. What's up, that the big mad up? Well, Honest John and Gideon had most of their scenes cut out, including their second interaction with Pinocchio and the tavern scene, meaning they disappear a quarter of the way through the movie. Hi diddle-dee-dee indeed. The coachman is a freaking joke now who ends up being more of an instigator of bad behavior than just a spectator like he should have been. Like he's just supposed to round up the boys and let them destroy themselves, not push them to do awful things. And Stromboli is confirmed to have gone to prison at the end, which kind of taints the message that evil actions don't always get resolved. Like if he got disposed of, what's to say the other three aren't going to get arrested when the authorities realize the ties they have to each other? Okay, that's a little bit of a stretch, but it could happen. These things are honestly minor compared to how they ruined Jim and Pinocchio, but it's yet another person in the Congo line of problems this movie has. But in my opinion, the moment when I knew there was no hope for this remake was when they recreated my favorite scene. No, not the opening, not the Blue Fairy's arrival, not Give a Little Whistle, that song's not even in this version. I'm talking about the clock scene. Please hear me out. The clock scene is absolutely mesmerizing. What starts as a simple tingling of a bell slowly builds up into this beautiful symphony of different ticks, tocks, clicks, clacks, dings, and chimes, each one unique and each one following in sync with the beat and melody that was established. The visuals are constantly fresh, switching to a unique new clock and sound every few seconds. And not only is it visually and auditorily beautiful, but it actually tells us something interesting about the man who carved them. Before this moment, Geppetto was mostly just seen as a chipper little chipper of wood, carving another special creation of his. But when he first takes Pinocchio for a test drive, we start to notice some interesting quirks he has. He actually starts parenting the puppet, teaching it manners like saying how do you do, and even showing it that actions have consequences when he makes it kick Figaro and then he gets kicked back. This gives us the impression that Geppetto has repressed desires to be a father without saying a single word, and we're shown proof that he'd actually be pretty good at it, and this is taken a step further when the clock scene occurs. You ever realize just how morbid a lot of these clocks actually are? Like the ducks and the bees and the birds are cute, but then you got a turkey getting decapitated, a poor bird getting shot, a mama spanking her child, a drunkard getting wasted at the bar? Like, geez, Geppetto, why'd you pick such morbid subject matter for your clocks? Well, in my opinion, this scene tells us without words that Geppetto in his old age has witnessed everything life has to offer, both good and bad events, and is not blind to the tragedies that exist in the world. He knows that innocent animals will be killed for food and hunted for sport. Those that disobey will be violently punished, and downtrodden people will often spend entire nights with a bottle in their hand. Death, depression, violence, it's all very real, and he not only knows it, but also integrates it into his art. And the fact that all the clocks still work together to form a harmony as more sounds get added shows that despite all of this, the world keeps turning. New people are born into the cycle, and there's nothing we can really do but accept it. This shows in a more dark and subtle way that Geppetto would absolutely make a good father because despite his happy demeanor, he's very well versed in how the world works and has a good head on his shoulders. A head full of knowledge that he can pass down to his future child when the time is right. And if all that's too subtle for you, he keeps a freaking blunderbuss under his pillow just in case. He knows what's out there in the world, and if it enters his house, he's ready for it. This 1 minute of animation is so masterfully done. It basically shows off all the movie's best qualities in a simple little melody. Stop back. The clocks in this version just make noise. No music, no beautiful harmonies, no freaking thought whatsoever. Most of the clocks are replaced with random Disney properties which make absolutely zero sense as to how Geppetto would even know who these characters are and ruin the subtle message about Geppetto's worldly knowledge. This scene is only a few seconds long, meaning no satisfying build-up or establishment. Everything here is just completely wrong. Throw in the fact that Geppetto himself is about as charming and interesting as the wood he's toting around, meaning I wouldn't even care about him anyway. My best friend playing. And you basically have a scene that encapsulates everything wrong with this movie. Subpar visuals, non-existent music, annoying noises, needless shortening, weird pop culture references, lack of build-up, missing characterization, and complete misunderstanding of source material. All it took was a few loud Disney brand clocks to let me know for sure that this movie was gonna be nothing short of cuckoo. Bottom line, don't watch this movie. You knew that already. Moving on. Pinocchio, a true story.
No, I'm not sure about that one. I don't know if that checks out.
Yeah, anybody who hangs around in the animation stratosphere knows that this movie got the tongue lashing of the millennium when it released in March of this year. A strange American redub of a year-old Russian-made 3D picture with bizarre casting choices that somehow turned Pinocchio into Pinocchio. Yes! Everyone bashed this thing 6 ways from Sunday, but maybe that was just the internet being the internet, and in the end, this movie actually does have substantial and significant things to say. It really is as bad as everyone says. Though it is ironically enjoyable. In fact, instead of reviewing it, which everyone has already done, here's a little list of all the weirdest moments I noticed while I was watching it. Or you could just skip to Del Toro's entry at the end, which I'm sure is what most of you came to see anyway. Alright, let's go.
Boys and girls, and of course their pets.
What? He'd grow up to be a selfish actor, or an artist, or a turtle who only cares about pizza.
What?
You're probably the only talking horse in the world.
What?
I'm a boy and I'm alive!
What? What?
You don't think it's suspicious that there's no one suspicious in your home?
What?
When can I leave to be on my own?
What?
Maybe time just got lost on its way here.
What?
Grabbing the audience by their feet.
What?
Someone here has sausages for brains.
What? 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 What?
We'll go back to my father as soon as we see the world. But for now, you can take his place.
What?
If someone wants to be human, all they have to do is be human.
What?
You, sir, are a monster.
No, I just didn't get enough sleep.
What?
Attention, please, my dear friends. I'm gonna tell you now.
What?
You know, when it comes to the 365-meter dash for Best Pinocchio Movie of the Year, it's fair to say that Del Toro's movie had no competition whatsoever. I mean, one movie tripped over the starting line and broke its neck, while the other choked on its pre-game dinner and didn't even show up to the event. So it would be easy to just hand Del Toro the trophy and call it a day. But, if you actually stuck around to watch this movie's run, you would have witnessed a film that successfully completed a triathlon, blindfolded with one leg missing, had enough time to end world hunger and save an orphanage, and still snag the all-time world record. Ergo, this movie is an absolute timeless masterpiece that even rivals the best adaptations of the story. There are so many things I could mention about this Pinocchio. I could talk about the absolutely stellar visuals that are ironically both breathtaking and a breath of fresh air. The intricately crafted character designs that look as lovingly carved as a handmade puppet, with fantastic details like bloodshot eyes during crying scenes, and cute little touches like Sebastian Cricket's little mustache. Fictional characters made from scratch which are just as intriguing as the real humans. The beautifully hand-painted vistas when a character looks off into the distance, looking like they could just hang in a museum for all to see. The incredibly fluid movements on display, from goofy comedic scenes like Pinocchio's silly floppy walking when he's getting used to his new body, to emotional scenes when the characters simply need to slow down and feel, all showing that stop motion, while time-consuming, can be just as effective at simulating motion and emotion as anything else in the medium. And so many little moments that leave you awestruck wondering how the heck did they do that with the resources they had? I mean, look at this water. Look at how gorgeous this water is. It's ironic that water was the most visually striking part of Disney's original Pinocchio as well. So we have two artists stretching the possibilities and limits of their respective styles, both using the same basic element. Del Toro said before that he sees Disney's Pinocchio as an untouchable masterclass of animation and wanted to distinguish his version from that as much as possible, and I think he absolutely succeeded. I could talk about the incredibly charming cast of characters that all walk unique paths and come out as different people in the end. Geppetto with this tragic, grief-stricken journey, desperately doing everything he can to try and restore the wonderful old life he used to have with his son, going so far as to call his new child a burden because he refuses to be like the old one, but eventually realizing that when something's gone, it's futile and even harmful to try and bring it back, and you simply have to live in the now and appreciate the new blessings that life gives you instead of constantly yearning for the old. Sebastian Cricket, who goes from a self-serving autobiographical bug after nothing but fame, fortune, and prestige to someone who's willing to sacrifice life, limb, and even otherworldly assistance to help others. And he gets a full-fledged family out of it. The titular Pinocchio being the epitome of innocence and cluelessness, staring at the world with wide-eyed wooden wonder, and singing songs with his angelic little voice provided by Gregory Mann, but then slowly becoming accustomed to the horrors of the real world and truly understanding what it's like to become a real boy. And so many other strange and bizarre side characters that range from tragic to terrifying. A true masterclass in masterful casting that helps to give substance to the amazing style. I could talk about how this movie takes unique elements from the Disney 2022 remake and actually does them properly. Like Pinocchio being an effigy of Geppetto's long-lost dead son makes sense here because instead of just introducing it immediately as a plot point with barely audible melancholy exposition in a drab, boring scene, they actually give us a whole 10-minute backstory showing the bond between Geppetto and his son, and also a more visually striking and human-feeling moment when Geppetto carves Pinocchio out of anger. Pinocchio intentionally lying to get himself out of a sticky situation works here because Pinocchio already learned the moral that lying is wrong and also got permission from his father figure to do it for their own well-being, instead of the first time he lies being beneficial, meaning he essentially learned nothing. They even do their own version of putting Jiminy in a glass object, where Pinocchio traps Sebastian in a drinking glass and puts a hammer on top of him. And this actually works because in the end, Pinocchio is the one who seals the glass shut, showing that he himself is refusing to acknowledge his conscience from this moment on and will make whatever decision he chooses, even if there's major risk involved. This suggests recklessness, which adds to his character, while the remake scene actively took away from a character and the themes he was attached to. We all knew that Del Toro's Pinocchio was gonna trump the Disney remake when it came out, but geez, it didn't need to style on it this hard. I could talk about the dark, realistic tone and atmosphere that holds absolutely zero punches, showing in full detail things like tragic loss and heartbreak that don't just result in crying scenes, but substance abuse, angry, violent outbursts, and self-harm, living such an empty and lonely existence that the second you wake up from a night of drinking, all you can think of is immediately going back to the bottle, over and over and over again. The terrifying abusive work conditions that occur behind the scenes of some of the most unassuming child-friendly industries in the business, treating their workers like slaves and punching bags in an effort to just drain as much money out of them as the blood that drains from their beaten wounds. And of course, most tragically of all, the reality and horrors of war. The fact that such an objectively terrible thing can be warped into something to be proud of while morphing everything and everyone else around it, turning children's innocent minds into disheveled, brainwashed tools for a higher purpose, turning inoffensive and charming entertainment into manipulative propaganda, and turning the most harmless and inoffensive of communities into rubble and ruin just because the bombs that the planes were hauling back to base were too heavy. As much as it hurts to say, in the laser sight-guided eyes of war, people like us are not even a blip on its radars. But I'm not going to talk about any of that, because I already did. Instead, the main thing I want to focus on here are the phenomenally presented themes, the very things that made this movie my favorite animated film of the year. Now, I've talked about Disney's original version, which contains the core theme that the choices we make, the mistakes we learn from, and the experiences we have are what essentially make us real people, or real boys as the movie would put it. But this movie actually adds a unique branch to the tree, saying that we also have limited time on Earth to do these things. It's true that life's short span gives it intrinsic value. Every second counts when your existence on this earth is on a clock, and it's best to waste as little of it as possible. However, I can understand some people feeling that life is ultimately futile because when our time comes, all those experiences and lessons and ideas will die along with us, since we're then unable to personally share them anymore after we've passed on. But Pinocchio shows us in multiple ways that there is a method for our life experiences to outlive and surpass us through the things we create. Mankind's ability to create, in my opinion, is what truly sets us apart from everything else on the planet. Pinocchio himself is a creation in both senses. His body is a handmade artisan work, like a painting, sculpture, or wood carving, and his soul is that of a human, conceived through the union of people and then raised by those people as well. And everything about him perfectly shows how the creations we make can last longer than our own short lives. His hastily slapped together, almost broken looking body on top of a more detailed and carefully carved face shows that Geppetto was in a state of both primal fury and longing anguish when he was putting Pinocchio together. It's similar to how just looking at certain pieces of art can immediately illustrate the emotion the artist was feeling when making it. Pinocchio constantly repeats things he was told to other characters in the movie, in the same way that the things we create contain lessons and life experiences we truly believe in and want to use to inspire others who consume our art. Thanks to Pinocchio, Candlewick realizes how much he misses the childlike games and activities that his father was constantly keeping away from him, and is ultimately inspired to stand up to his oppressive ways and carve out his own path in life. Spazzatura the monkey is inspired to stand up to his abuser and come to a family who actually treats him like an individual instead of a tool who's constantly told that he owes a life debt to a cruel person. The way Pinocchio compares himself to Jesus on the crucifix is so fitting because whatever you want to say about faith, symbols like the crucifix are inherently art inspired by the teachings of someone long since passed that is still inspiring faith in others today. Pinocchio constantly dying and coming back can be seen as how art can essentially be immortal and be recovered by new generations, going on to inspire people for decades to come. And the beautiful ending monologue where Sebastian talks about how unsure he is about Pinocchio's fate. Will he die? Will he live? Hopefully people will embrace him, shows the truthful uncertainty of whether or not our art will actually catch on. We can't know for sure if what we make will inspire future generations. We'll be freaking dead by that point. But making something and putting it out there is still a risk worth taking, because there's always the chance that what we make will uplift or inspire someone later down the road. This speaks to me so much because I believe that creating was what I was put on this earth to do, and something that I feel everyone should try at least once. Write a story, paint a picture, make a movie, construct a game, fill it with things you find funny, ideals that motivate and move you, and show it to the world. It can inspire people to take action, like with Candlewick and Spazzatura. It can inspire others to create works of their own, like how Sebastian went from writing an autobiography to writing stories about imperfect fathers and sons after witnessing Pinocchio's struggles. Just please keep creating, or at least try it once. Everyone should. At the end of the day, as sad as it may sound, we are all puppets to something. There are many different strings that keep us hopelessly bound up and restrained. Emotion, loss, service to a higher power, and even fate itself. But in the end, we can still make a choice. We can choose to just hang there, never making a sound or emotion, until we inevitably gather dust and rot away. Or we can wave hello, do a little dance, put on a performance for the people by conducting those strings. We can use the very burdens that repress us and bind us as a means to express ourselves creatively. Put our positive and negative emotions and experiences associated with these things into creative works that can resonate or inspire others. And if we're lucky, we'll do so for years after we disappear. We may all be puppets, but we can still put on one heck of a show. So yeah, Del Toro's version's the best. That was freaking obvious. Yay! While it was obviously a stomp as to which of these three would come out on top, I feel like this video really shows the versatility that the Pinocchio story has when it comes to adaptations. There are tons of different ways that a simple puppet wanting to be a real boy can be used to interesting effect. Simple yet profound fairy tale storytelling, cautionary tales, unintentional hilarity, or insightful commentary on human creation. But as always, let's hear what you guys think. Do you agree with my assessment of these Pinocchio adaptations? Do you have a favorite version of old Piney Heiny that isn't one of these three? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and I hope to see you all real soon.